I'm giving my top 10 49ers of the 2023 season. We're looking back to last year, but you could also say it's the top 10 49ers heading into 2024. Of course, we're assuming that certain individuals will remain with this team as we're heading into the regular season. All the preseason games are over. I feel like a broken record every year saying the 49ers have the most talented team, they have the most talented roster in the NFL. But it's true. It's not just saying this as a 49ers fan. On paper, they have the best roster, and it's been that way 2019, 2020. You had the injuries, 21, 22, 23, 24. And we're talking about 5 or 6 seasons like this. Yet, no Super Bowl. And for 2 of those seasons, the problem has been Patrick Mahomes. So let's get into this. Number 10 on my list is Dre Greenlaw. He's never been to a Pro Bowl, but you can't deny the importance of Greenlaw and the role he plays on this team. We can all agree that Fred Warner is the best off-ball linebacker in the NFL, but Greenlaw does some things that Warner doesn't do. As much as I love Warner, Greenlaw is an intimidator. Greenlaw is a big hitter. He plays with such intensity, and he is a superb athlete out there on the field. And sometimes I feel the 49ers don't even take advantage of all of his athleticism out there. And for this season, looking back at, last season, he had the 2 interceptions in the divisional round against the Packers. The one that ended the game right when the Packers were trying to go down the field. And you can't ignore how good he was in the Super Bowl. And the Super Bowl changed when he was injured. I mean, it was just terrible what's happened with the 49ers and the injuries in some of these huge playoff games. I mean, and you're thinking of linebackers, and you know what I'm thinking about with linebackers. Who else? Look no further than what happened with Navarro Bowman. And then you lose Dre Greenlaw in the Super Bowl, and it was when the momentum changed. And Travis Kelce was having a very quiet game till Greenlaw has the Achilles injury. He fell over on the sideline, and he had a torn Achilles. And he's going to be missed at the start of the season. The 49ers have interesting prospects at linebacker, and they brought in a veteran like Campbell. But Greenlaw is a very, very valuable piece to this defense. He's number 10. Number 9, it seems strange to say this, and you think maybe he would be higher on the list, but I'm saying Deebo Samuel at number 9. I mean, he's one of the most unique players in football. What he does is he's more than just a receiver. He's also a running back. He's had over 200 yards rushing for 3 consecutive seasons. Last year, he had 893 yards receiving, 7 receiving touchdowns. He added 225 yards rushing and another 5 rushing touchdowns. He averaged 6 yards a carry rushing, which was actually the second highest outside of his rookie year. He had some injuries, though. He missed a couple of games, but he was very strong season. And although he's never got back to the level he was in 2021, he's such an important player for the 49ers. And what I would also add about Deebo is, man, did he bring it in the game against the Eagles. I mean, that was, in the regular season, as big of a regular season game they had all year last year. And man, was that a great performance out of him. We'll just look at his numbers quickly here. This is what Deebo did in the 42-19 victory that the 49ers had in Philadelphia over the Eagles. 3 rushes for 22 yards and a touchdown. We had 4 receptions for 116 yards, including a long of 48, 3 total touchdowns. He was the player of the game that day. And it was an unforgettable regular season matchup and victory for the 49ers. And number 8, I'm going to go with Brandon Aiyuk at number 8. And we're, of course, hoping that this deal gets done sometime soon. He's had back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving seasons. This was clearly his best season in 23. He had over 1,300 yards receiving, 7 touchdowns. He's not always necessarily going to wow you, but he's so consistent, and he's consistently improved upon his game. He's a legitimate number 1. And of the two, I mean, it's very difficult trying to compare Deebo with Aiyuk, but he is the better receiver. You can argue back and forth who's the better football player, but Aiyuk was better than Deebo overall when you're looking at the entire season last year. He's a professional, great route runner, good hands, the number 1 receiver for the 49ers. Number 7 is Charvarius Ward, who was a Pro Bowler for the first time last year, the 49ers, and he had a very good year. His first season with San Francisco in 2022. He had a better year in 2023. He's known as a player that didn't get very many interceptions. I mean, a very good corner. I mean, probably in a perfect world, he's just a superb number 2 corner. But he's also good enough to be a number 1. What's interesting, when you took his first 5 seasons, he had 5 interceptions in 5 seasons. Last year, he had 5 interceptions altogether. So he matched his first 5 seasons in the NFL with this one season having 5 interceptions. He had a pick 6. He had 23 passes defensed. 23. He had a forced fumble. I'm a huge fan of his game. I think he's underrated, and I'm really glad to have him in San Francisco. And he was an excellent signing by John Lynch. Give John Lynch that. Taking him away from the Chiefs. This is one of the better signings the 49ers have had recently, and I'm almost tempted to actually put him higher on our list. He's one of the best players on the team and obviously on the defense. Number 6 is Brock Purdy. And this may have been the same slot I had with him before. It's just such a talented team, and it would be so easy to move one player up, one player down. But when you look at Purdy, he did improve upon his rookie year. I mean, he only started 5 games in 2022. 2023, he went over 4,000 yards passing. He had 31 touchdowns to only 11 interceptions, and 4 of those came in one game. Completion percentage 69.4. And this was all coming off a season where we didn't know what to expect because of the elbow injury. We didn't know, and he came all the way back and he got better. And you wonder how much better he might actually get. And he didn't have a great Super Bowl, but my feeling about the Super Bowl was he was good enough to win. Yes, not really efficient, but he did not make the costly mistakes that someone's like Garoppolo made. He didn't have the multiple interception game, nothing like that. He was good enough. What's really impressive about Purdy is he already has more playoff wins than Lamar Jackson. He has more playoff wins than Dak Prescott. He has That's what he's done, and he has a 4-2 playoff record in his first two seasons. And it's even saying that it's sort of hard to hold the loss to his record when he got injured right at the start of the game in Philadelphia. But for the record, he's 4-2, and he's just been a winner. His regular season record so far as the quarterback is 17-4. Playoffs is 4-2. His first season they reached a conference championship game. Second season they lose a Super Bowl in overtime. Although they didn't get the ultimate prize, I mean that is an incredible start to this young quarterback's career, and I'm excited to see what's next. To be fair, too, there's no denying that he has one of the best supporting casts in football. Trent Williams, the best tackle in the NFL. George Kittle, he's the best all-around tight end in the NFL. I mean, when we talk about tight ends, yeah, we'll go into that when we get to Kittle. He's got Debo, he's got Ayuk, he's got Christian McCaffrey, the best running back in football. I mean, the true test to see how good Purdy really is to see, well, how good is he when he has less weapons. But he's done nothing but win. He's been among the best quarterbacks in the league, and I think it's hard not to put him as a top 5 quarterback presently in the NFL. Who am I going to put ahead of Brock Purdy right now? Patrick Mahomes. I would say a healthy Joe Burrow. I mean, I'm really high on Joe Burrow as long as he's healthy. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Those are really the only 4 guys I would go with over Purdy right now. Am I going to seriously put Dak Prescott or Jalen Hurts, the way he regressed, and Jared Goff, who can win games, but you're not going to win the big game with Jared Goff. I'm not putting any of those guys ahead of Brock Purdy. And as I've already said, there should be room for improvement. Why shouldn't he get better? He had his first full offseason as the starter to improve all the more. That's Brock Purdy at number 6. Well, number 5 is George Kittle. And it's funny how people talk about George Kittle as if he's on the decline. He had injuries. His Super Bowl was not good at all. I mean, when you look at his numbers, he only had 2 catches for 4 yards in the Super Bowl. And I think that's what people think. That's what people have in mind when they think of George Kittle. And hey, I wasn't happy about it all. And I wasn't happy about it either when I was watching the Super Bowl. I'm like, get Kittle the ball. He needs the ball. And it didn't happen. But I'm going to put that aside for now. I'm going to look at his regular season. He was a Pro Bowler again. He was an All-Pro for a second time. And in 16 regular season games, he still had over 1,000 yards receiving. He had 6 touchdowns. And then when you just think about what a tight end should be, he's the best all-around tight end when you take into account not only the receiving, but the blocking. And he's right there at the top of PFF, as he usually is. because he is a complete tight end. If you want to just simply look at the production as a receiver and who's the better receiver between him and Travis Kelce, sure, I'll agree. Travis Kelce is better and has the better career. But when I look at Travis Kelce, I just say, well, he's really just a receiver. George Kittle is a true tight end, and he's a tight end that could play in any era. That's how good George Kittle is. Great blocker, and I don't see how an 1,000-yard receiving season was a disappointment. This is the third time he's done that in his career. And if he has another couple good seasons, he's a Hall of Fame player. Number 4, Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa's fallen down in my ratings for his high expectations and level of play. It was a disappointing year for Bosa, and the holdout did not help him. But even with all that, he had a great season. 10.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, fumble recovery, 4 passes defensed. He was still around the top of the league with quarterback hits, quarterback pressures. You always have to know where Bosa is on the field. And it'd be great to see him get back to more of that Defensive Player of the Year level. But even on a down year, Bosa is easily within the top 5 most important 49ers. And let's see how he does this year. Number 3, the player who surpassed Bosa as the best player on the 49ers defense, that's Fred Warner. Fred Warner is the best player at his position, middle linebacker, the best off-ball linebacker. He was Pro Bowler last season, All-Pro. There's really no debate who's the best middle linebacker in football. He had 132 tackles, and the numbers don't do it justice, but let's give the numbers. 132 tackles. He had 4 interceptions, 4 forced fumbles, 2.5 sacks, 6 tackles for loss. We've seen great linebackers in San Francisco. Patrick Willis just went in the Hall of Fame. Navarro Bowman before the injury in Seattle. And now we have Fred Warner. Now, I'm not going to compare these great linebackers today, but Warner is in the discussion with them, with Willis, with Bowman. His style is different. Those 2 players were big hitters. Warner is, without a doubt, the top cover linebacker in the NFL. He's good at everything on every level. Great tackler. He's sideline to sideline. He's very smooth. He's as good as it gets in coverage. Like Willis, he's very good at forcing fumbles and getting the ball out. It's a real joy to watch him play out there. And perhaps, I mean, what's among his greatest attributes as a player is he's out there. He doesn't get hurt. He's durable. He plays in just about every single game. In fact, he has never missed a game due to injury. If he keeps this up, he's a Hall of Fame player. He does not have a weakness. Number 2, I would rank this somewhat differently than others. Number 2, I have Christian McCaffrey. He was the NFL Offensive Player of the Year in 2023. When the 49ers decided to trade for McCaffrey, I knew he was a very good player, but to be totally honest, I didn't understand it because it seems like with the Shanahans that anytime you have any running back, you can be successful with almost any running back. You go back to the Mike Shanahan days with the Broncos. After Terrell Davis, you had Gary and you had Mike Anderson in there. Just plug your guy in there. And the early years with Shanahan, it seemed the same way. So why do you need Christian McCaffrey? Well, I don't say that anymore because the season, well, not even quite 2 seasons, full seasons in San Francisco. He's been a Pro Bowler 2 times. He's been an All-Pro this last year. This was the best season of his career. He led the NFL in rushing with 1,459 yards rushing. He had 14 rushing touchdowns. To go along with that, he added another 564 yards receiving, 7 receiving touchdowns. So altogether, he had 21 touchdowns. He averaged a career high 5 yards a carry. He's tougher than I thought he would be. He has great vision. He brings toughness. He doesn't have elite speed, but he has enough speed. And then that's just his running. He's the best receiving running back in the NFL too. And he earned the NFL Offensive Player of the Year. I still feel he should have won the MVP. I know it's hard because the 49ers have so many great players, but Lamar Jackson did not have, at least statistically, a great season last year. It felt like the 49ers-Ravens game, whoever came out on top was going to win the MVP. I don't really agree with that. If you just look at the regular seasons, McCaffrey had the better regular season than Lamar. McCaffrey doesn't have any weaknesses in his game. Lamar actually does have some weaknesses. So he's earned number 2 on this list, and it bothers me that the 49ers lost the Super Bowl again because I don't expect McCaffrey to have a season as good as this again. This is the best season he's going to have. Last year was his age 27 season. How could you expect him to have a better season than that? And actually, I would like to see the 49ers lighten his load in the regular season. You have a player like Jordan Mason. Use him more and keep McCaffrey even more fresh for the playoffs. If there was just one negative thing to bring up for McCaffrey, it would be he fumbled at the start of the Super Bowl. He didn't have a great Super Bowl. For his standards, and that's why I keep saying with all these players, because the standards are so high with them. He had a good Super Bowl, and when I came to that Super Bowl, I was saying McCaffrey's got to have a great Super Bowl to win. I mean, he's got to have a big game, and that's another thing that went wrong in that Super Bowl. I mean, the numbers look good. You look at his rushing and receiving numbers, they look good, but there really weren't any huge plays from him. But of all the skilled players on the 49ers, he was clearly the man. He got off to a fast start. And for me, it was the best season I've seen from a 49ers running back. I didn't get to see Roger Craig. I didn't get to see Ricky Watters. Saw all of Frank Gore's seasons. This was the best I've seen. And finally, Trent Williams is number 1. When I made the list after the last season, my top 10 list, I put Nick Bosa 1 because he was Defensive Player of the Year, and then number 2, I went with Trent Williams. Well, I learned my lesson, and I would make that list differently now because Trent Williams is what makes everything work for the 49ers offense. And this team was different when Trent Williams was hurt. They had a 3-game losing streak, and you can point to one reason more than any other why they had a 3-game losing streak last year. It was the game against the Browns where he was hurt. Then there was the Bengals and the Vikings games where he was out and they lost those 2 games. And as great as Christian McCaffrey is, he's even better because of Trent Williams. Brock Purdy's life is better because of Trent Williams. He's one of the greatest offensive linemen to ever play. He's one of the greatest offensive tackles in NFL history. 11 Pro Bowls, 3 All-Pros. It's one of the greatest trades the 49ers have ever pulled off. 3 consecutive All-Pro seasons. Think about this in his age 33, 34, 35 season. That's really impressive. As a run defender, he's as good as it gets. He's excellent at pass defense. If I could only say one negative is Trent Williams did not have a good Super Bowl. It was a disappointing Super Bowl for him. But with all that said, he is the best of the 49ers. There's no player that's more important to their success than Trent Williams. This is a team that loves to run the football where you know where they want to run it. And he's protecting Brock Purdy's blind side. He is the best offensive lineman in the NFL. And if you get your rankings right with the 49ers, he has been, so I correct myself, he has been the best player on the team ever since he joined them in 2020. So that's my top 10 list. Number 10, Dre Greenlaw. Number 9, Deebo Samuel. Number 8, Brandon Ayuk. Number 7, Charvarius Ward. Number 6, Brock Purdy. Number 5, George Kittle. Number 4, Nick Bosa. Number 3, Fred Warner. Number 2, Christian McCaffrey. Number 1, Trent Williams. This was the most frustrating thing about losing the Super Bowl again. I respect the Chiefs. The Chiefs are so well coached. They have the best player in the sport in Patrick Mahomes. You had a far more talented team. You had the team this time around. You had a better quarterback than you had in 2019. Garoppolo. You had Brock Purdy. You had Brock Purdy instead of Garoppolo. With all due respect to Raheem Mostert, you had Christian McCaffrey instead of Raheem Mostert. With all due respect to Joe Staley at the end of his career, you had Trent Williams. With all due respect to Richard Sherman that season in 19, Charvarius Ward's playing better than Richard Sherman at that point in his career. And they still lost the Super Bowl. As long as they get these guys signed back, Ayuk and Williams, you're not going to have a better opportunity for the foreseeable future to win the Super Bowl. You better do it this year.